Now we discuss the two different models of justice system, or the models which tells us about the principles on which justice system is established. One is the due process model and the other is the crime control model. So due process model is the idea when we think of impartial justice, when we think of fair trials, it is the due process model. Justitia, the blind goddess of justice, is actually embodied. It shows us how the due process model is done. So she is blind or sometimes blindfolded, which tells us that she is impartial. So she is not going to look at a person, the color, his clothes, his money, and decide in his or her favor. So she is impartial and she is blind when deciding a case. Then the balance in her left hand shows that the trial will be fair. So both the accused and the prosecution will get equal benefit. So the state will not be favored and the accused will not be favored. The evidence will be judged fairly and rationally. And then when the decision is made, then she has this sword in her right hand, which denotes punishment. So then once the evidence has been seen and justice or decision has been given fairly, then there will be punishment. There will be no stopping of punishment after that. Two further principles of due process are that the right of accused to be tried by its peers, meaning thereby that he will not be tried by someone outside his country, outside his race, and outside his group. Then there is the presumption of innocence before the criminal law. So everybody is innocent before proven guilty. So that is the basis of law. So nobody is considered guilty and has to prove it himself or herself as innocent before coming to court or in the court. So the burden of proof is with the state. So state has to prove that a certain individual has committed a crime. The accused has only to show or create a reasonable doubt. So he or she can only has to show that he may not be there, while the state has to show that it was he who was there and who committed the crime. In case of criminal trial, the burden of proof is even higher. Pakistani constitution favors or privileges this due process model. And if you look at Article 10(1), which is part of the fundamental rights, so it says that safeguard from arrest and detention, and no person is arrested shall be detained without being informed about his arrest or denied to right to consult and defined by legal practitioner of his choice. In the 18th Amendment in 2010, a specific new subclass was added in Article 10A, which is the right of fair trial, and it says, for the determination of his civil rights and obligation, or in any criminal charge against him, a person shall be entitled to a fair trial and due process. So due process is actually mentioned now, is actually part of Constitution now. So it is the favored model as far as Pakistani Constitution is concerned. However, if you look at the actual practice in Pakistan, the due process model is not followed. So if, for example, if you look at the NAB Ordinance, it's actually the accused who has to prove that he is not corrupt. It's not the NAB or the state which has to prove. So NAB has only, it has totally turned upside down the due process model. So NAB only has to show that he has money and he has no legal sources of money, and then it is assumed that that person is corrupt. while the person has to prove all the things that he has to do, which is then there is no right of bail, and of course long imprisonment without trial. Then in Pakistan we have missing persons and detention centers by security forces, both by our military and police, where people are kept for long time without being presented in courts. So this is another violation of due process model. In KP, there was a law was passed recently, and it calls for long detentions by police without producing the person in court. Then in police stations and everywhere, torture and use to get evidence. Then there were military courts, until recently military courts, which didn't accept due process and convicted people based on flimsy evidence. And then of course there are blasphemy cases where a person, if is accused by blasphemy, everybody considers that he or she has blasphemed. So this is how it is working in Pakistan.